Hey guys, tonight we're going to one of the strangest and most magical places ever built for weary travelers. A Persian caravanserai on the edge of a vast, burning desert. It's not just a hotel. It's a resting heart in the middle of nowhere, where camel drivers, silk traders, and Sufi poets all sleep under the same sky. Imagine tall stone walls, torchlight flickering on arched ceilings, and the scent of roasted dates curling into the night air. You're probably not going to survive here, not because of bandits or storms, but because the carpets are too soft and the lamb stew is far too good. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and your time zone in the comments. It's always amazing to see where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sand crunches under your shoes as you walk the final steps. The sun is melting into the horizon like pomegranate syrup, and the desert cools fast. You didn't expect the air to shift so quickly, from hot, biting wind to a sudden stillness, where even the flies go quiet. In the distance, torchlight blinks above the walls of the caravanserai, as if the building itself is breathing, calling you in. No signs, no gates, no guards, just a wide archway of sun-dried clay bricks, still warm to the touch. You pass through the entrance. The shift is immediate. Outside was the world. Inside is something else. The air smells of soot, sandalwood, and something savory. Meat cooking, maybe, or burnt lentils. You can hear a fountain somewhere, the sound rounded and soft, echoing between walls thick enough to muffle even the strongest wind. To your left, a boy is chasing a goat, barefoot. To your right, two camels sit with their knees folded beneath them, like monks in meditation. Their breath rises in plumes, thick and slow. Everything here moves slowly, deliberately. A woman walks past you with a metal tray of tea, stacked with tiny porcelain cups. She doesn't look at you, but her scarf brushes your sleeve as she passes. You step further in, drawn to the center courtyard, where a tall cypress tree sways gently in a breeze that wasn't there a second ago. The lanterns hanging above it flicker, gold, green, and a faint violet, made of old-colored glass, each one buzzing faintly, as if whispering its own language. A man waves you over from behind a low wooden desk. He looks more like a potter than a clerk. His fingers are stained ochre, and he speaks with the kind of accent that doesn't belong to any place you know. You can't tell if he's welcoming you or just talking to himself, but he hands you a wooden token with a number carved into it. 12. He gestures vaguely toward a stairwell, then returns to writing in a massive leather-bound book that smells like damp earth and cinnamon. You climb the steps. Each one creaks just slightly under your weight. A moth dances in front of your face, illuminated by the flame of a lantern hanging crookedly from the wall. The corridor is narrow and dim, its floor lined with woven mats and scattered sandals. A cat slips past your leg and disappears through a curtain before you can react. At the end of the hallway, your door waits. Thick wood, no lock, just a fabric loop to pull it closed. You step inside. The room is smaller than you imagine, but not claustrophobic. It's simple. 3 rugs, one deep red, one faded blue, one golden with a leaf pattern, cover the floor. The bed is a mat rolled tightly in the corner. Above it, a lattice window lets in the faintest breath of dry air and the faraway murmur of a flute. You sit. You breathe in the silence. There's no mirror, no clock, just a brass bowl of water, a small oil lamp, and a ceramic cup filled with dried rose petals and cloves. On the wall, someone has scratched a name, or maybe a prayer, in a script you can't read. It curls like ivy. For a moment, you don't move. You let the room settle around you. The outside world feels hundreds of miles away, and maybe it is. You close your eyes, just for a second, and the darkness behind your eyelids feels softer than sleep. You stretch your legs and step back into the hallway. The woven mats cool under your bare feet. Somewhere down the corridor, someone laughs, low, tired, like they've been on the road too long. You follow the sound without thinking until the hallway opens again into the courtyard. It's darker now. The lanterns have multiplied, or maybe you just didn't notice them before. They sway in unison, casting honey-colored shadows that ripple across the pale stone walls. The courtyard is busier than before, but still quiet in that dusty, respectful way only desert nights can be. Travelers sit cross-legged on carpets. Some sip tea from glasses that catch the firelight like gems. Others simply watch the lanterns move. You notice a tall man with a wrapped turban polishing the brass spout of a samovar, the steam rising around his hands like mist. A woman sings softly in a language you don't know, her voice rising and falling like the breeze. The main gate remains open. Always open, they say. Caravanserais weren't fortresses. They were sanctuaries. Merchants, mystics, thieves, and soldiers all slept here without a blade drawn. Or so the stories claim. No locks, no questions. Just four walls and a sky full of stars. That was enough protection, supposedly. You wander past the central fountain where someone has tossed in petals. Maybe jasmine. The water's surface is smooth, disturbed only by the occasional splash from a resting bird. You take a seat near the fountain's edge. The stone is warm. Behind you, a merchant from the Levant is telling a story about a spice market in Tabriz. He says the cardamom there is so fresh it can wake the dead. He might be right. You lean closer without meaning to. That's when you notice the shoes. So many of them. Pairs of leather sandals, curled up slippers, thick-soled boots, even some beaded ones that look more decorative than useful. All neatly arranged at the edge of the courtyard. No one seems to claim them. You wonder if it's a tradition. Leave your shoes near water. Let the dust wash off by sunrise. Or maybe it's something older. Something sacred. Something no one talks about anymore. You slip yours off and place them next to a pair with gold stitching and worn soles. They're too small for a man, too used for a child. They feel like they've been waiting for someone else's journey to end. You don't ask questions. Someone offers you tea. It's dark, almost black, with a floating strand of mint. It tastes bitter and sweet at the same time, like a story you only half remember. The man who gave it to you says nothing. He just nods once and returns to his seat, staring into the lantern light as if it's telling him something the rest of you missed. As the night thickens, you start to feel the air change again. Not colder, exactly, just slower, thicker, like time is dissolving into the lantern smoke. You look around, trying to guess how old this place is. Some say these walls have stood for 1,000 years. Others whisper that the foundation is older than Persia itself. The truth? Historians argue about it even now. Some think the first caravanserais were simple camps, no walls at all, just circles of wagons and hopes. But here, in this courtyard, surrounded by strangers and their sandals, by songs in lost languages and tea that bites your tongue, you're not really worried about what's true. You're just grateful the walls still hold, that the lanterns still burn, that someone still offers tea without asking your name. A boy walks by with a clay jug. He stops in front of the fountain, leans over, and lets the water pour in. You hear a faint sizzle as hot clay meets cool stream. He looks at you, smiles faintly, and vanishes around a column. You're not sure if he's a guest or a ghost. You lean back on your palms and stare up. The sky has cleared. The stars are so sharp, they look like they could cut. Somewhere far beyond these walls, caravans still crawl through the dust. But here, for now, there's only stillness and warm stone, and the quiet certainty that you've arrived exactly where you're meant to be. Even if, just for one night, you wake from a moment you didn't realize was sleep. The stars haven't moved, but the courtyard has. It's quieter now. The crowd has thinned. Some guests have retreated to their rooms. Others lie sprawled under blankets near the walls, faces lit by the pulsing glow of hanging lanterns. You rise slowly and stretch, the joints in your back popping like dry wood. The night feels thick on your skin, not heavy, but close, as if the air wants to stay near you. You walk barefoot across the warm flagstones, turning toward the northern side of the Caravanserai. There, in a shallow alcove near the stables, you find a cluster of travelers sitting in silence. Not talking, not drinking, just being. One man is carving into a piece of soapstone with a small blade. Another woman is sketching, not the courtyard, but a spiral of imagined stars. You nod, and they make space for you without speaking. A few moments pass before you notice the man polishing something in his lap. It looks like a plate at first, but as the firelight dances on its surface, you realize it's a mirror. Polished steel, curved slightly, framed in leather. He holds it at an angle, and for a second, you catch your own reflection. Softer than you expect, a little unreal. He sees your curiosity and lifts the mirror. "Steel from Khorasan," he says, his voice rough but kind. It doesn't show your face. It shows what your eyes don't admit. You smile, unsure whether to laugh or nod seriously. He continues wiping it in small circles, careful and slow. Around you, the lanterns hum. Not literally, but somehow the sound of them fills the space. You think about how this place runs. There's no front desk, no check-in. No one asked your name. Yet everyone seems to know who belongs here. Even the cats. Especially the cats. One slinks past your leg now, brushing your calf with its tail like punctuation at the end of a sentence. "Do you know why the doors stay open?" The woman with the drawing asks suddenly, without looking up. You don't. Because the worst danger is outside, and sometimes also inside. So we don't pretend the walls are stronger than the sky. She grins, almost mischievously. Besides, a locked door is a lie to yourself. You don't answer. The mirror man tucks his steel away in a cloth pouch and leans back. The carving traveler stands and stretches, revealing a pouch tied to his belt. As he moves, something spills from it. Small seeds, or maybe beads, and you hear one of them land with a satisfying tink near your foot. He doesn't notice. You pick it up. It's not a bead. It's an amulet, shaped like a teardrop, engraved with a symbol you don't recognize. You hand it back, and he smiles without words, the kind of smile that forgives the road, the dust, and all its accidents. Someone brings out a stringed instrument, worn, with only 3 of its original 5 strings, and starts plucking a melody that sounds like a memory you've never had. You sit longer than you meant to, soaking in the stillness, the flicker of lanterns, the feeling that time here doesn't pass, it unfolds. This Caravanserai wasn't just a rest stop. Historically, they were the heartbeat of trade, diplomacy, survival. Every 2 days of desert needed a place like this. A place to heal your feet, water your beasts, tell your secrets to someone who wouldn't write them down. Historians agree on that much. But what they still debate, and this makes you smile, is whether these places had rules or if they were governed entirely by unspoken trust. Some claim a host was always present. Others say no one was ever in charge, just the rhythm of arrival and departure. You like the second version better. A breeze moves through the courtyard again, rustling the herbs hung near the kitchen. Lavender, thyme, dried citrus peel. You breathe in deeply and feel your shoulders drop for the first time in days. Someone hands you a warm fig stuffed with nuts. You thank them, and they nod as if that's all they needed to hear tonight. Above the courtyard, a bat flutters briefly in the lantern light, chasing a moth. The group slowly begins to drift apart. The woman folds her sketch. The mirror disappears into a bag. And you rise, not because you're tired, but because the moment is complete. You head back toward your room, footsteps soft and slow, like they belong to someone who has lived here for years. The lanterns sway gently behind you, and the air tastes faintly of old fruit and flickering flame. The wooden door creaks softly as you enter your room again, and the warmth inside is exactly as you left it. A soft glow from the oil lamp lingers on the rug, like the memory of fire. You sit cross-legged on the floor for a while, not doing anything, just breathing. The stillness wraps itself around your shoulders like a borrowed shawl. Outside, someone is humming, a slow, repetitive melody that sounds older than words. You let it fill the air around you, like incense. But tonight, you don't want to sleep just yet. Something pulls you back out, back into the heartbeat of the building. You leave your room and drift down a different corridor this time, where the scent shifts from rose petals to something richer, lamb, spices, and smoke. You find yourself outside a low arch leading into the kitchen. Inside, steam rises in thick columns from clay pots, filling the air with the scent of cumin, turmeric, and garlic. A large man with sleeves rolled high stirs a stew so thick it looks like it's dreaming of becoming bread. You stand at the threshold, hesitating. "Come in, or stay hungry," he says without looking. So you step in. The kitchen is a labyrinth of shelves, pots, and brass ladles hanging like wind chimes. A boy squats by the hearth, feeding dried apricot wood into the fire. The flames lick the bottom of a blackened pot, and steam hisses where broth bubbles over. Above the hearth hangs a bundle of dried herbs tied with red thread. Not for flavor, the cook explains, but for protection. Against what? You ask. He shrugs. Whatever walks in, uninvited. He ladles some of the stew into a cracked ceramic bowl and hands it to you. It's heavy, almost weighty enough to anchor you to the floor. You sit near the hearth and blow gently across the surface. The smell alone could put you to sleep. Chunks of lamb, yellow lentils, something sour that bites your tongue. Preserved lemon, maybe. It's rich, earthy, healing. The cook eyes you as you eat. You a merchant? You shake your head. Poet? Another number? Then you're a listener, he says, nodding. Listeners eat free. The boy near the fire giggles at that. As you finish, someone enters carrying a basket of flatbread still puffed with warmth. It's wrapped in linen stamped with a blue pattern, a sun, and 2 lions, the symbol of some long-forgotten caravan guild. You break off a piece and notice the crisp bottom dusted with ash. It's the kind of bread that only exists when made by tired hands and shared in silence. You eat slowly, chewing each bite as though it matters. The cook tells you about a spice he used, hing, from India. A pinch too much, and the whole stew tastes like boiled feet. But just enough. And it sings. He learned that the hard way, he says, rubbing his stomach. He also tells you a story. Not loudly, just between stirring. About a trader who once collapsed in this very kitchen from heat stroke. They revived him with a soup made from yogurt and cucumber. That man now sends a pouch of saffron every year. No note, no return address, just thanks wrapped in gold thread. You ask if that's a true story. The cook shrugs again. True enough for here. Historians write about caravanserais as economic hubs, linking empires and cultures, feeding the arteries of the Silk Road. But they never describe the smell of hing in hot butter, or how a cracked bowl can make a stranger feel like family. They talk about distances and dates, not about how long a good stew can keep a man from giving up. The cook gives you another ladle, just a half scoop, for the soul, he says. Then he returns to his work, and you return your bowl to a basin of soapy water. A cat you didn't notice before jumps onto the counter and starts licking the rim of a bowl. No one stops it. You leave with a full belly and a light heart. The air outside feels softer now, like it's passed through flour and cloth. You walk back through the hallway slowly, fingers trailing along the stone wall. Your hands smell like cumin and smoke. Your breath feels longer, deeper. You hear a flute again, closer this time. Someone is playing by the fountain, but you don't go toward it. You've had enough sound for one evening. Now, you crave stillness. You return to your room and find everything just as you left it. Except, the brass bowl has been refilled with water. And on your pillow, someone placed a small fig wrapped in dried jasmine. No note, no explanation. Just a quiet kindness, like a whisper of welcome. You place the fig on the low table beside your mat and crouch near the bowl of water. It's cool, still, catching the lantern light like liquid glass. You dip your fingers in, and for a moment, it feels like time itself softens. You splash a little on your face. The sensation is almost ceremonial, not cleansing exactly, but like an arrival. You haven't come to wash off dust. You've come to remember who you are when the dust settles. But sleep still refuses to settle in your bones. So once more, you step outside. This time, you move past the courtyard, toward the far side of the building, where a group of travelers lounges around a small fire. A thin old man, with a robe too long for him, gestures for you to sit. He has kind eyes, a voice like dried dates, and a pouch of spices tied to his belt. Without being asked, He begins to tell a story. Not one of war or kings. No heroes. Just a map. A strange one. Painted on goatskin, with coastlines that spiral inward and towns labeled with smells instead of names. Historians hate this map, he says with delight, because it's not useful, but it's true. You ask what that means. He shrugs. You tell me, listener. He says he once walked from Isfahan to Damascus without using a compass, just by following the smell of rain on stone. You don't know if you believe him. You don't need to. Someone nearby is sketching the fire, their ink brush barely moving. Another writes a letter under the starlight, as if the stars might edit it later. You look around and realize half the people here aren't speaking at all, just existing. Eyes closed, listening to the way flames speak when no one's trying to control them. The old man tells you about a tradition, or maybe a superstition, from a long-dead city. Before travelers left, they'd bury a coin in the courtyard as an offering to the road. Not for luck, but for mercy. Because the road takes things, he says. And it's better to give it something first. You wonder if there are coins buried under your feet right now. Hundreds of them. Tiny forgotten promises. Historians agree on one thing about these places. They were more than rest stops. They were places of transmission, not just of goods, but of memory, language, faith, scent, melody. A man could arrive speaking one dialect and leave singing in another. He might not remember the names of cities, but he'd recall the flavor of the bread, the color of a woman's scarf, the hum of a string instrument just out of tune. You glance at the fire again. It's smaller now. Someone's letting it die with care, not neglect. The coals glow like little sleeping eyes. One by one, the travelers stretch, yawn, wander off. Some back to rooms, others to lean against pillars and watch the sky. The old man stays seated. He pulls a pouch from his sleeve and unties it. Inside, a collection of tiny stones, each painted with a single letter in different alphabets. He rolls them between his palms like prayer beads. He doesn't explain what they're for. Instead, he looks up at you and says, "If you want to leave a mark, don't write it in stone. Write it in the way you pour tea, or in how you sit when someone cries. You're not sure whether to respond. The moment doesn't ask for it. You nod. He nods back. Then he closes the pouch and rests his head against the wall. You rise quietly and begin walking back. The fire behind you exhales a final puff of smoke, and the air tastes like cinnamon and dust. You pass by the fountain once more, noticing how the water glows in the moonlight, like silver caught mid-breath. In your room again, you finally lie down on the rolled mat. The fig still waits on the table, untouched. You don't eat it. You just look at it, soft, wrapped in jasmine, like a secret kept by the night. Your head sinks into the small pillow, and the last thing you see before your eyes close is the dance of lantern light against the ceiling, like stars caught in amber. Your sleep doesn't last long, or maybe it does, but in a way that doesn't feel like time. You wake slowly, not startled, not rushed, just aware. The room is darker now, except for the faintest blue flicker coming through the lattice window. A breeze slips in, barely enough to move the edge of the rug. You sit up, not from discomfort, but from curiosity. Something in the air has changed. Outside, the Caravanserai is quieter than you've heard it yet. Even the wind seems to tiptoe. You walk softly down the hallway, your footsteps absorbed by thick mats and sleeping stone. This time, you follow a dim light coming from a side room you hadn't noticed before. A small alcove off the main path. A heavy curtain blocks most of the view, but it sways gently, inviting. Inside, 3 travelers sit in a semicircle, and in front of them, on a raised wooden platform, stands a man in layered robes. He holds no scroll, no book, just a single sheet of folded parchment. You linger in the doorway. No one seems to mind. The man begins to speak. Not loudly, not as a performance, just enough for the words to fill the room. He's telling a story about a map, not the one you heard earlier, but another. A lost one, possibly fake. According to legend, it depicted the stars as cities, and the cities as memories. And every person who looked at it saw a different version of their own future. Some historians claim it was created by mistake when a royal cartographer spilled ink during a fever dream. Others believe it never existed at all. You wonder if it matters. The man reads a line aloud. To walk far, first learn how to be still. He pauses. No one speaks. You feel the words settle in your chest like sand filling a jar. He folds the parchment carefully, almost reverently, and steps down. That's it. No applause. Just silence, and the sound of a candle extinguished between 2 fingers. You stay seated as others shuffle out, their eyes heavy, their feet slow. Only one remains, a woman with long silver earrings who sits with her back perfectly straight. She watches the room long after it's empty. Then she turns to you and says, I used to be a dancer. In Samarkand. Her voice is clear, like water moving over polished stones. You don't ask how she came here. She continues without prompting. One day, I danced with a lantern in each hand. The flames never died. Not once. The next day, I couldn't remember the steps. Not one. She smiles, not sadly, just as if telling you about weather. So I came here to forget on purpose. You ask if she succeeded. She considers it. I remember everything, but it no longer belongs to me. That sentence stays with you as you return to the courtyard. The lanterns are dimmer now, their flames shrinking into themselves. Someone has hung fabric banners along the stone walls, and they sway in rhythm with a breeze you didn't feel earlier. You look up and see the stars clearer than ever, like holes punched in silk. You can almost imagine falling upward into them. A man nearby is muttering to himself, tracing lines in the dust with a stick. He's drawing a figure, not a symbol, not an animal, but something abstract. Something swirling. He notices your gaze. Protection, he says simply, from sleepwalkers. You raise an eyebrow. He nods seriously. They move between dreams. They take things. Then he laughs, as if he just made it up. Or maybe didn't. He erases the drawing with his palm and stands. A bronze chain jingles around his ankle, not as a restraint, but like a musical afterthought. He walks off, humming something that doesn't sound quite human. Again, the scholars have their theories. Some say Persian caravanserais served as proto-inns, with standardized distances and architectural guidelines. Others claim they doubled as intelligence hubs, neutral zones for whispers and ink. A few even argue some housed ancient libraries beneath their foundations, though no one's ever found one. The truth lies somewhere in between, as it always does. But no scroll or chronicle can explain why this place feels like it's breathing, why it holds your footsteps like secrets, or why the flames in the lanterns lean slightly whenever you pass, like they recognize you. You return to your room and lie down again. This time, with the fig in your hand. You don't eat it. Just let it rest there. It feels heavier now, like it absorbed part of the night. You close your eyes slowly, wondering if the sleep that waits for you now is entirely your own. You wake again, or maybe you never truly slept. The room is still, but something stirs in your chest, a quiet pull toward the courtyard. Not urgent, just insistent, like a memory that doesn't belong to you. You rise and step outside. The stone beneath your feet has cooled, and your breath fogs slightly in the air. The sky is beginning to pale. Not sunrise yet, but close. That strange, in-between hour when the world holds its breath. In the courtyard, a few guests sit quietly, sipping dark tea from clay cups. One of them beckons you over, a short man with a long beard and eyes like wet stone. Beside him, a large leather case lies unopened. "Sit," he says. "It's almost time." You don't ask what he means. You just sit. He opens the case slowly, as if unsealing something sacred. Inside is a map, but not one of roads or rivers. This one is made of stitched cloth, aged to the color of smoke, with tiny metal pins pressed into it in strange patterns. Each pin marks a place I've left something behind, he says. Sometimes a boot, sometimes a person. He chuckles, then sighs, but always something. You stare at the map. It hums with quiet sadness. He points to one of the pins, a red one. This one's for a town that doesn't exist anymore. Earthquake. Or maybe a king got jealous. No one's sure. You ask why he still marks it. Because forgetting is rude, he says, even to ruins. He rolls up the map with practiced hands and sets it aside. You know, he adds, some say these places, Caravanserais, were built to trap dreams. Let them walk around a while, stretch their legs, then let them go. You wonder if he believes that. I believe they trap you, he grins. In the best way. A new traveler arrives, dust clinging to his robe like regret. No questions asked. Someone brings him water. He drinks slowly, as if remembering how. No one asks his name. It will come, or it won't. Names are loose here, like windblown scarves. Nearby, a woman is painting on a shard of pottery, using crushed berries and ash as pigment. The colors smear softly into the clay. You ask what she's painting. A lion, she says, or maybe a memory of one. She dips her finger into a bowl of red, drags it gently across the shard, and doesn't explain further. Somewhere above, a lantern sputters and goes out with a tiny pop. No one moves to relight it. The flame served its purpose. It's done. You walk along the edge of the courtyard now, fingers trailing the wall. Each stone feels different. One smooth, one cracked, one strangely warm. You stop at a small alcove where a cat sleeps on a cushion embroidered with pomegranates. Next to it, a scroll lies open with writing in tight, delicate lines. A poem, maybe, or a list of names. You don't touch it. You pause near a carved niche that holds a small bronze object, too worn to tell if it was once a cup or a bell. You hear footsteps approach. A young girl, no older than 10, steps beside you and peers at the object. It sings, she says. You tilt your head. Only when no one listens too hard. Then she skips away, leaving the silence behind her like a folded scarf. Historians still debate how much spiritual significance caravanserais held. Some say they were practical, nothing more, built by royal decree for trade and tax routes. Others insist they served as holy places, halfway between mosque and home. You stand there, unsure which side you agree with. But this place, this exact courtyard, this morning air, these quiet strangers, it feels sacred enough. You sit again, near the fountain. The water still flows, steady and unbothered. A single feather floats across its surface, not a bird in sight. Someone sets down a bowl of dates beside you. You glance over, but no one claims it. They're plump and glossy, sticky with honey. You take one, careful not to disturb the others. As you chew, you taste time. Sunday. Wind. The weight of days packed into sweetness. The air is shifting again, not in temperature, but in tone. The sky is becoming less dream and more light. The Caravanserai is waking, slowly, in layers. You feel the change, not as a moment, but as a murmur beneath your ribs. You rise, brush the dust from your knees, and prepare to follow wherever this night decides to lead you next. You step away from the courtyard just as the first slice of dawn begins to bruise the sky. It's not full light yet, just the faintest hue, the color of ripe figs or old parchment. You walk through a narrow passage where walls lean in close, their surfaces carved with the initials of people who once passed through, or maybe never left. One mark looks fresh, a date perhaps, or a number. You trace it lightly with your fingers. It's cold. The corridor opens into a long side room you hadn't noticed before. There are no lanterns here, just small clay dishes holding coals that glow low, almost invisible. The floor is scattered with cushions and shawls, and on the far side of the room, a single dancer moves in slow, deliberate circles. No music plays. Her feet make no sound. Her arms move like fabric caught in a breeze, slow and precise, as if responding to something only she can hear. You take a seat near the wall and watch. She isn't young. Her joints creak like dry branches, but there's elegance in her weight. She dances like someone who no longer needs to impress the gods, only to remind them she's still here. Every so often, she pauses with a hand extended, like offering a memory to no one in particular. You don't dare speak. You barely breathe. After some time, she stops and bows, not to anyone, but to the space itself. Then she gathers a shawl from the floor, wraps it tightly around her shoulders, and walks out without acknowledging the audience that wasn't there. You realize you were holding your breath. You let it go. A man seated nearby breaks the silence. That's the fourth night in a row she's danced. He sips from a ceramic cup, says she's chasing a memory that won't stop moving. He doesn't elaborate. You don't ask. You turn your attention to a large textile hanging on the far wall. It's stitched in a patchwork of colors, none of them bright, but all of them rich, deep. Burnt gold, ink blue, clay red, shapes you recognize from the desert. Camels, palms, crescent moons, but woven among them are stranger symbols, spirals, hands, a series of tiny open eyes. You stand and walk closer. The thread shimmers when it catches light, but it doesn't feel like silk. More like something older. Maybe even hair. You run your fingers over the edge. A woman sitting nearby says softly, "It's a map." You glance at her. "Not of land," she continues. "Of questions?" You smile, unsure what to say. She doesn't need you to respond. She simply shifts her weight and pulls a blanket around herself. The silence resumes. In one corner of the room, a small wooden table holds a pile of stones. Each is marked with a single letter or symbol. They don't match. Some look like Greek, some Arabic. One or two like runes. A sign beneath the pile reads, Leave a truth, take a truth. You consider it for a moment, then pick up a small, flat stone marked with a curved line, almost like a smile turned inward. You carry it with you as you exit. Outside, the sky has lightened. Not fully morning, but no longer night. You feel it in your bones. The transition. This is the hour when decisions are made, and no one remembers making them. You pass a man scrubbing copper bowls in silence, his fingers red from the cold water. Another guest walks by, wearing a crown of woven straw. Not a costume, not a joke, just something he decided to do. No one reacts. Historically, some say these caravanserais had rituals, informal ceremonies to mark arrival, departure, or forgiveness. But the records are inconsistent. Some scholars argue that nothing was ever written down on purpose to preserve the mystery. Others claim it was simply a matter of illiteracy. Either way, something here feels ritualistic, and you're part of it now, whether you understand it or not. Back in the courtyard, a girl sweeps the stones with a broom made of bound reeds. She hums softly, and with each stroke, the dust rises and then resettles. Nothing leaves completely. She pauses as you pass and says, "Did you leave something behind?" You start to answer, then realize you're not sure. The stone in your hand feels warmer now. You walk slowly toward your room again, the passageway still echoing faintly with the dancer's silence. The walls seem less solid than before, not weaker, just less certain of where they begin and end. Inside, the oil lamp is still lit, barely. The flame trembles, not because it's tired, but because it's listening. You lie back on the mat and let the quiet return to your body. You close your eyes and think of maps stitched from questions, dancers chasing shadows, and stones with secrets. And somewhere in the dark, the memory of someone else's footsteps fades into yours. You wake to the sound of whispering, not loud enough to make out words, but steady, like wind through silk or 2 pages brushing in a book. You sit up slowly. The oil lamp has gone out. A soft blue light seeps through the lattice window, casting a pattern on the rug like the reflection of water. It's early. Earlier than even the sunrise wants to be. You slip on your shoes and step outside, where the air is colder now, sharp enough to sting a little. The courtyard is empty, except for one figure hunched over a scroll, using the last of a candle to read. As you pass, he glances up and says, "You just missed it." You stop. "The comet," he adds, tapping the sky with his pen. "It passed above us maybe 10 minutes ago. Very slow, very bright." You look up, but there's nothing now. Just a few pale stars trying not to disappear. They say it's the same one they saw over Fes 30 years ago, or maybe in Samarkand. Depends who's telling it. You sit beside him, curious. He rolls up the scroll with practiced care and begins folding it into perfect thirds. Some say comets are omens. Some say they're just fire and ice. I say they're good excuses to look up. He tucks the scroll into a weathered satchel and pulls out a second. A map, you think, but it's not drawn in lines. It's a series of dots and circles, like constellations on a forgotten sky. A friend of mine believes the sky repeats itself every 312 years. Same stars, same path, same mistakes. He smiles. I'm still trying to prove him wrong. He opens a book filled with annotations in at least 3 languages, diagrams, numbers, questions scrawled in margins. You recognize one word, scribbled over and over in different hands. Why? You ask what it means here. He shrugs. Everything. Two more travelers join the low bench where you sit. One carries a cup of yogurt with pistachios floating on top like tiny boats. The other has ink on her fingers and a broken reed pen in her hair. They nod at you, as if this bench was always meant to be shared. The man with the maps tells a story about a king who tried to ban comets from being spoken of. He thought they caused unrest. Turns out, it wasn't the comets. It was the taxes. You all laugh quietly, the way people laugh when they're not fully awake, but grateful to be included. Someone mentions a legend that certain travelers used to carve the image of a comet onto the doors of caravanserais, believing it would draw fortune or ward off betrayal. Historians have found such markings in a few sites, but no one agrees on the meaning. A warning, a blessing, or just an inside joke from one century to the next. You glance toward the walls. No markings here. Or maybe they're hidden under years of dust and stories. The woman with the ink on her fingers says she once followed a comet for 6 months, traveling from village to village, sleeping in barns and temple courtyards, sketching its path in charcoal. It looked different each night, she says, like it was pretending to be something else. A fish, a torch. Once, it looked like a question mark. You ask if she ever figured out what it meant. She shakes her head. I think some things are just meant to be followed, not answered. The man beside you pulls a small piece of glass from his satchel, a shard of a broken lens. He holds it up to the sky, and through it, you see the stars bend slightly, like they're sighing. Truth, he says, is how much distortion you're willing to accept. You all sit in silence for a while, watching the sky lose its stars one by one. The air lightens. The courtyard stirs. You rise slowly, stretching limbs that have grown still without stiffness. You begin to walk back to your room when someone calls after you. If you see the comet again, don't tell us. Let it be a rumor. You turn and nod, smiling. The best stories never end where they're supposed to. Back in your room, the fig is gone. In its place, a single pistachio shell. Clean, pale, empty. You don't question it. You lie back on the mat, the lattice pattern still etched faintly into your vision, and breathe deep. The stars are gone now, but they've left their echoes. The day breaks softly, with a kind of reluctant grace. You wake to warmth, pressing through the lattice, turning the walls gold and the rug beneath you into a mosaic of shadow and light. There is no call to rise, no knock at your door, just the slow invitation of morning and the whisper of things already in motion. You step outside into a courtyard transformed. The lanterns have been extinguished, their frames now dangling like the bones of paper birds. Rugs are being rolled, bowls stacked, animals watered. It's not noisy, but purposeful. A slow ballet of motion that signals preparation. The caravanserai is stretching, remembering its shape. Near the fountain, a group of travelers are crouched over something large and rectangular. As you draw closer, you see it's a wooden box, its surface carved in geometric spirals. One of the travelers lifts the lid, revealing rows of small glass vials, each sealed with wax and labeled in tight script. They murmur to each other, exchanging guesses. Some say it's perfume. Others say medicine. One man says it's paint for messages only seen by moonlight. The truth is, no one opens a bottle. You sit beside them. The box's owner, a wiry woman with a bandaged hand, says nothing. She simply watches you all. Then she speaks. Not everything needs to be open to be understood. You nod, pretending to understand. Moments later, another traveler arrives. A man with a scarf wrapped high over his mouth. He places a small clay pot on the stone beside the box and walks away. Inside the pot is a cream-colored paste that smells like ash and mint. Camel balm, someone says, for cracked skin. Someone else sniffs it and mutters, or for cursing enemies. No one's really sure. You dip a finger in and rub a little on your palm. It tingles, then cools. Nearby, a man and a woman argue quietly over a scrap of cloth. It appears to be part of a map, or maybe a flag. She claims it's from a temple in Shiraz. He insists it's a banner used by desert bandits. You think it might be neither, or both. Historians might call it textile debris. But here, it's a mystery with a heartbeat. You walk toward the stable, where camels chew lazily and blink like they know something you don't. A boy with ink-stained hands is painting symbols on one of the stable posts. Not letters, just lines and dots. You ask what they mean. He shrugs. My uncle says it tells the animals where not to step. You smile. Maybe that's true. In the corner of the stable is a stack of folded carpets. You lean against them, letting the smell of wool and dust and old rosewater wrap around you. Above your head, swallows have built a nest in the rafters. One flutters down, perches on a lantern hook, and stares at you like you've interrupted something sacred. You apologize softly. A man passes with a long stick over his shoulder, the end wrapped in strips of copper. You ask what it's for. He stops, thinks for a moment, then says, measuring arguments. You laugh. He doesn't. Sometimes two people can't agree on whose turn it is to be quiet. This settles it. He continues on. You return to the courtyard as a low drumbeat begins. Not music exactly, just rhythm. Someone is pounding dough flat in the kitchen. The cook is back, sleeves rolled up, hair tied in a cloth, humming a tune with no melody. You catch the scent of coriander and something toasted. The courtyard feels alive in a different way now. Not mysterious, but necessary. Every movement feeds into the next. You see it clearly. The stitching of people and objects and silence. A kind of language that doesn't need words. You find yourself back near the traveler with the wooden box. She has closed it now, tied it shut with a leather cord. No one asks what's inside anymore. The mystery has served its purpose. It's been shared. You sit on the low wall near the fountain. The water sparkles now, lit from above. You remembered a feather that floated across it in the night. It's gone, but you swear the ripple it made is still there, repeating over and over, like the trace of something important no one else saw. The air smells of toasted flatbread, warm stone, and time. Thick, slow time. The kind that pools in corners and seeps into your skin. You remain by the fountain, your fingertips trailing across its worn rim. The stone is smoother now in the daylight, and the water clearer, shallow enough to see coins resting at the bottom, all different shapes and metals. Some polished by centuries, others still new enough to carry a sharp edge. You wonder how many of them were dropped in quietly, a whisper of hope disguised as habit. A voice nearby interrupts your thought. Each coin is a promise, says a man, leaning on a cane carved with notches. Not a wish, a promise. Wishes are for fountains that don't remember. You glance at him. He's older than the furniture, or seems to be. His skin folds like paper, his beard curled in two neat braids. I threw one in 40 years ago, he adds. Never told anyone what it was for. Still haven't. He taps the fountain gently with the cane, like knocking on a door. Still waiting for the fountain to answer. You smile and ask if it ever will. He shrugs. It already did. I just didn't understand the language. Behind you, someone is brushing out a carpet, rhythmic, focused. Dust dances upward into the morning light, catching in golden shafts before disappearing. The cleaner hums an old melody, older than any recording. You recognize it without knowing how. You wander to a shaded corner where small clay figures sit in rows on a low table. Some are animals, lions, camels, birds with oversized wings. Others are people, hunched or stretching, frozen mid-motion. A girl sits nearby, no older than 12, painting eyes onto one of the figures. She dips her brush in a blue pigment and asks without looking up, "Do you want to make one?" You hesitate. She points to a small lump of clay and hands you a wooden tool. You sit. As you shape the clay, slowly, awkwardly, you realize you're not trying to make anything specific. Just a form, a feeling, maybe a flame, maybe a leaf. The girl nods approvingly, as if it doesn't matter. Some people bury theirs under the rugs when they leave, she says. Some throw them into the fountain. Others just leave them in the sun until they crack. You ask what she does with hers. She shrugs. I remember them. The smell of fresh bread curls through the air again, pulling your attention. You rise and walk toward the kitchen, where the cook is plating flatbread alongside small bowls of things you can't identify. One green and oily, one thick and gold, one smelling like roasted garlic and regret. You're handed a plate without asking. You sit on a low step and eat slowly. A man joins you, cradling a glass jar full of dried apricots. He offers you one. It's sweet, tangy, and sticky, the kind that coats your teeth with memory. We keep them for winter, he says, but sometimes we forget and eat them all in autumn. He grins. That's how you know it was a good year. He tells you that this caravanserai was once known for its library, not of books, but of voices. People would come and sit in a round room and speak their stories into the walls. The clay remembered them, he says, and when the right wind comes, you can still hear the laughter. You ask if that's true. He doesn't answer. He just takes another apricot and leans back, eyes closed, like he's listening for it now. Historians mention only briefly the idea of oral libraries in these places. Most dismiss it as folklore, but you can't help but wonder if they ever paused long enough to listen to the walls themselves. You wander again, your steps slow and unhurried. The morning has fully settled in now. Light bounces gently off the walls, revealing faded inscriptions, dates, sketches, names half lost to erosion. You place your hand over one, and the wall is warm beneath your palm, as if the stone still remembers the fingers that carved it. In your pocket, you still carry the small painted stone from earlier, the inward smile. You take it out, hold it up to the sun, then tuck it beneath the edge of the nearest rug, just far enough in that no one will step on it. You're not sure why. You return to your room, not to sleep, but to breathe, to pause. On your pillow, someone has left a strand of saffron, curled like a tiny question. You lie down and let the ceiling pattern fall back into your eyes. The caravanserai exhales, and you, quietly, with it. The day matures gently, never rushing, just deepening in color and warmth. You rise again, unsure whether minutes or hours have passed. The air inside your room has grown heavier, infused with the scent of sun-warmed clay and something floral. Perhaps the saffron strand, perhaps something drifting in from outside. You step into the hallway and hear the distant clang of copper against stone. A bell, maybe, or just someone working. You follow the sound until you reach a small garden tucked inside a second courtyard, one that seems to exist only in certain parts of the day, revealed by sunlight and silence. Pomegranate trees line the edges, their leaves shimmering in the breeze like coins. Bees hum lazily between blossoms. A man sits cross-legged near a patch of herbs, sorting dried leaves into small paper packets. You approach, and without looking up, he says, "You don't want the strong stuff. Not in this heat." He hands you a packet anyway. Inside, something crushed and green, with a smell like old tea and forgotten forests. "For clarity," he says, "or the opposite if you steep it twice." He winks. You sit beside him. Around you, the garden breathes. Every leaf, every blade of grass seems to exhale. The man continues sorting. "This one's called lion's tongue," he says, pinching a dark stem. "For courage, or for insomnia, depending on who you ask." He places it carefully into a folded slip of paper and seals it with a tiny wax dot. Behind him sits a wooden box, this one locked, its surface engraved with birds in flight. You ask what's inside. He smiles. Everything that doesn't need to be said. He taps the lid twice. It listens better than I do. Some historians speculate that caravanserais sometimes house traveling apothecaries. Unofficial, unregulated, often mistrusted by cities, but cherished on the road. Others argue they were nothing more than spice vendors with dramatic hats. You're not sure which this man is, but he seems to know the difference between bitter and necessary. A woman approaches with a slight limp and places a copper coin in his hand. He gives her a small jar and says, "Only at night. And don't let your cat near it." She nods solemnly and disappears between the trees. You glance at the remaining jars. None are labeled. You sip water from a jug placed near the wall. It's infused with rose petals and a sliver of orange peel. Cool, fragrant. A reminder that refreshment is an art here, not just a need. As you rise to leave, the man hands you another packet, smaller than the first, tied with red thread. "Don't open it until you've forgotten where you got it," he says. You laugh, thinking it a joke. He doesn't laugh with you. Back in the main courtyard, someone is stringing cloth between two pillars. The fabric is translucent, hand-dyed in blues and rust tones, casting colored shadows across the stone. Beneath it, a group has gathered, not speaking, just sitting, watching the play of light like it's telling them something. You sit too. And for a while, you let the sun speak through color. Then someone begins to play a hand drum, slow, soft beats that mimic a heartbeat at rest. A second drum joins in, then a third, until the rhythm becomes something between music and memory. No song, just time, held gently. A child walks past, dragging a stick in the dust, drawing a line that seems aimless but deliberate. He glances up at you, nods once, and continues on. The line curves and twists, wrapping around the columns, stopping just short of the fountain. No one steps on it. You return to your room to place the herb packets on the table, unsure whether you'll ever use them. The scent from them already fills the space, earthy, sharp, and strangely calming. You lie back for a moment and stare at the ceiling, where sunlight filters through the lattice and turns the dust in the air into gold. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to let the garden stay with you. The pomegranate trees, the man with listening jars, the packet you must forget, the line drawn in dust. Some places mark you quietly, without ceremony. They write their names in your breath. This is one of them. Later in the afternoon, you follow a scent that shouldn't belong to the desert. Something sharp, almost citrus, with an undertone of smoke and sweetness. It leads you down a hallway lined with patterned tiles, their glaze cracked, but still glimmering in patches. You pause at a wooden door, half open to the light, and step inside. The room is small and thick with fragrance. On every surface, low tables, shelves, even windowsills, sit ceramic bowls and glass flasks, some sealed with wax, some open to the air. Each contains powder, paste, dried roots, or leaves curled into shapes that look older than language. A man sits at the center of the room, grinding something with a mortar and pestle. His hands are stained the color of turmeric, and his beard is peppered with ash. He doesn't look up, but he gestures for you to come closer. "I have something strange today," he says. "It only blooms once a decade, and only in places no one should be." You ask what it is. He stops grinding and holds out a wooden spoon filled with grayish powder. "Don't eat it," he says. "Just smell." You do. It smells like burned almonds and rain. You blink. "It's illegal in Venice," he adds, "but only because someone thought it could make people fall in love with ghosts." You're not sure if he's serious. He smiles as if that were the point. This man is the Caravanserai's herbalist, or its alchemist, depending on who you ask. Some guests believe he trained in distant courts. Others say he's been here longer than the walls. There's no consensus, but everyone agrees his powders do something. He returns to grinding and asks you if you've ever tasted silence. You tell him maybe once. "Good," he says. "It means you're ready for this." He hands you a small jar, no bigger than a thimble, filled with something that looks like dark sugar. Rub it on your wrists at dusk. If the wind changes direction, say thank you. You accept the jar, unsure what you're agreeing to. He doesn't explain. He continues working while telling you about a visitor long ago who left behind a locked wooden box. Inside, supposedly, were instructions for preparing a mixture that could make a man dream of cities he'd never seen. Cities that later turned out to be real. "The recipe's lost now," he shrugs. "Or maybe it never existed, but I still check every scroll for it." You glance around and notice a strange object tucked into the shelf. A small figurine made of bone and copper wire. It's shaped like a bird, but its wings are folded wrong. You point to it. He nods. "That's not mine. It was found in a traveler's boot. No one knows how it got there, or why it hums when it rains." Theories about ancient Persian apothecaries abound. Some say they combined science and superstition in equal measure, bridging the mystical and the mundane. Others insist it was theater, a way to control the fears of guests on the road. But here, surrounded by jars that glow when the light hits them just right, it feels like both could be true. The man finally looks at you. His eyes are pale, not blind, but distant, like someone who looks more at air than people. "Be careful what you believe in," he says gently. "This place listens more than it speaks." You step out. carrying the tiny jar. The scent follows you, faint and sweet and impossible to place. Outside, the day is at its fullest. Shadows are short, and the stone radiates warmth beneath your feet. A group of guests sits in a semicircle in the shade, passing a large book back and forth. Each reads a line, then passes it on. You stop to listen. The language is unfamiliar, but the rhythm feels like breath, steady, inevitable. You find your way back to your room and place the jar on the table beside the packets from the garden. The air now smells like an entire world. Green, bitter, smoky, warm. You sit down on the rug, suddenly aware of how quiet your body feels. Not empty, just aligned, as if it's listening too. The wind picks up slightly outside. The curtain over your doorway stirs. You wonder if it's dusk yet. As dusk begins to press against the outer walls of the Caravanserai, the quality of light shifts from golden to something softer, gentler, the color of warm stone and old parchment. You rise from your room as if nudged, and the moment your feet touch the floor, you feel it. The change, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. The building itself seems to inhale, preparing for night. The courtyard is quieter now, as if everyone's agreed to speak in half voices. A few lanterns have already been lit, their flames wobbling inside glass mouths. The smell of rosewater returns, this time mingled with charcoal and fig smoke. Somewhere, a small fire has been lit just for scent. Near the fountain, a woman kneels with a bundle of scrolls wrapped in cloth. She unwinds them gently, revealing pages of cramped calligraphy and strange diagrams. A young man watches from behind, wide-eyed, whispering questions she doesn't answer. You sit on the edge of the fountain, listening. She says she's tracing a pattern that doesn't repeat, a sequence found only in the shadows of sundials. It's not a language, she adds. It's more like an echo of one. You glance at the page. Nothing makes sense. Lines curve into spirals. Letters fold inside themselves. And yet it feels familiar, like something you've forgotten on purpose. As darkness settles, the Caravanserai changes rhythm. The hustle of morning gives way to ritual. Rugs are unrolled again, not for trade, but for gathering. Oil is poured into lanterns with a reverence usually reserved for prayer. One by one, people return to the courtyard. Not summoned, just drawn, like moths to firelight. You notice someone lighting small candles along the rim of the fountain. Each is placed with care. Not symmetrical, but purposeful. You ask why. The woman with the scrolls answers softly. To mark the boundary between silence and sleep. You don't question it. Someone begins to chant. Low, rhythmic, wordless. Others hum along without hesitation, without needing to know where the sound began. It fills the space like smoke. Gentle, weightless, heavy with meaning. A traveler begins passing around a ceramic jar filled with something thick and pale. You dip your finger in and taste it. Sweet, with a trace of almond and cardamom. Camel's milk custard, someone says, or so they claim. You ask who makes it. No one knows. It just appears when needed. A child crawls into her mother's lap. A man folds his hands behind his head and watches the stars peek out from behind the darkness. Someone begins drawing shapes in the dust again. The same spiral from earlier, now joined by a second. You remember the stone you left beneath the rug and feel its echo in your palm. One guest rises and begins telling a story. Not loudly, just enough to thread through the evening. It's a tale of a bird made of glass that could only be seen in reflections, and only when forgotten. You think it's a parable, but no one treats it like one. They listen as if they might meet that bird tomorrow, waiting near the well. Historians rarely agree on what purpose nights like these served. Some say they were entertainment. Others argue they were a kind of therapy, a release valve for travelers carrying too much silence. There are even theories that some caravanserais hired professional dreamers, people who spoke their dreams aloud each morning to entertain or warn. No evidence, of course. But this place makes you believe in things that don't need proof. The wind picks up, and the fabric hung earlier begins to sway gently above your head. Its shadows ripple across the stone floor like slow water. You lie back on the rug, letting your head rest against a folded shawl someone left behind. The stars look different now, not brighter, just closer. A lantern near you flutters, its flame bending sideways for no reason. No breeze, just movement. You look at it, and for a moment, it feels like the flame is watching you back. The woman with the scrolls has closed her pages. The custard jar is empty. The chanting has slowed to breath. You close your eyes, and for a second, only a second, you swear you hear the sound of glass wings fluttering somewhere in the courtyard. Night has arrived fully now, not in a rush, but with a kind of knowing presence. The stars above burn steady, as if they've finally chosen to stay for a while. The courtyard is hushed again, but not asleep. It breathes. It listens. It holds everything that was said and everything left unspoken. You sit up slowly, not ready for sleep, but not needing to be awake either. Around you, travelers have settled into silence. Some lie on mats. Others lean against columns, their eyes closed, not quite dreaming. A cat paces the perimeter, tail flicking like punctuation between thoughts. Somewhere, a kettle hisses gently over coals, not boiling, just thinking. You rise and walk once more, guided by the softest pull of curiosity. A narrow staircase leads you upward, not to the roof, but to a small upper terrace that seems forgotten. Up here, the air is thinner, the stars louder. Below, the flicker of lanterns looks like constellations turned inside out. You sit on the edge, legs dangling, and listen. No voices, just sounds. The hush of wind, the occasional creak of rope against wood, a soft knock as shutters shift in their frames. Everything is slow. Everything is welcome. A man sits at the other end of the terrace, sketching with charcoal on old paper. He doesn't look up. You ask what he's drawing. Departure, he says. Not a scene, just the idea of leaving. You watch the dark strokes shape something. An open arch, the curve of a road, a figure walking away, but without feet. He turns the page before you can see the rest. You ask if he's leaving soon. Not sure, he says. The road will let me know. He offers you a piece of charcoal. Draw something you don't want to forget. You hesitate, then kneel and sketch on a piece of tile. A single lantern, simple, swaying. He nods. That'll do. Back downstairs, the courtyard is dimmed further. Most of the lanterns are out now. Only a few remain, not because someone forgot, but because someone remembered. A single guest is still awake, whispering to the fountain. Not praying, just talking. You can't hear the words, but they seem softer than breath. You return to your room, moving slower than before. The door creaks open, as if it's known your hand would be there. Inside, nothing has changed, and everything has. The air smells faintly of ash and orange peel. The herb packets still rest on the table. The tiny jar, unopened, glows faintly in the lantern light. The rug is warm. You sit for a moment, looking at the small shape you drew earlier in charcoal. Then carefully, you place it beneath your pillow. You lie back. The mat conforms to your body like a story retold just right. The lantern above flickers once, then steadies. Outside, a traveler coughs. A camel groans. A broom brushes quietly against stone. And then, stillness. No grand ending. No parting bell. Just a quiet, living silence. The kind that asks nothing from you, except to stay, just a little longer. The night thickens, but not with darkness. It's as if the hours have turned to fabric, thin and breathable, resting gently on your skin. You no longer feel where your body ends and the quiet begins. Everything blends. Everything softens. The lantern outside your room flickers its last breath and dims, leaving only the moonlight folded gently through the lattice. The shadows stretch out like threads, stitching you into this moment. The breeze returns, slower now, and moves across the rug like a hand smoothing a wrinkle. You breathe with it, slow, deep, without effort. Somewhere, water drips, not in rhythm, but in trust. You don't count the drops. You let them happen. One, and then another, and then none. The building no longer creaks. The courtyard no longer shifts. Even the wind has curled up beside the stones and gone quiet. You imagine the stones beneath your head, remembering every footstep they've held, every voice they've caught and never repeated, every secret laid down and never carried out. You wonder if you've left something here too. Not an object, not a drawing or a coin or a crumb of sleep, just a version of you, a quieter one, made of slower thoughts and slower steps. You feel it settle inside you now, that stillness, that soft exhale. And in this place that holds no clocks, no alarms, no boundaries between traveler and dreamer, you finally allow yourself to drift. Nothing else is needed. The road can wait. The walls will remember. And you can rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.